Hello, everyone. Linker here, starting a podcast series with the people that make the AFK Arena community what it is. And it's my absolute pleasure to start with a very special guest. Will you introduce yourself?
Hey guys, I'm WhiteSushi. You guys might recognize me from Reddit. And yeah, I think that's all I want to say.
For anyone who doesn't know, WhiteSushi is a pretty humble but the most recognized AFK Arena player right now to date. I think you can definitely see that with the Pearl event recently, right?
Yeah, for sure. The community has been pretty insane in the pro event. And I mentioned this a lot of times on my posts, but the overwhelming response is, really surprising.
That was so insane to see. If I recall right, you didn't even ask for it explicitly. You just said if you have anything spare and you don't want to leave it to a guild or anything like that.
My initial goal was to hit like 5% because usually what I do is to send pearls from my alts to my main. So that now I don't have to use those pearls and I can instead send those pearls to their guilds. But the Reddit community completely crushed that.
Definitely, especially like goes to show how well like you are across platforms. Like you have a Reddit, and I heard you recently started Twitch too, right?
The Twitch thing is supposed to be a secret. Like I don't stream regularly and I don't do AFK Arena content regularly. I've been a Twitch partner for like several years, but I just don't create content there regularly, which is why it's meant not to be known.
You have done so much to help people in the game. I bet so many people are very excited to get to know you. So I think the most burning question I have over here is who are you outside of the game?
Right now I'm just a college student or university student, depending on where you're from, and I'm actually studying for my last semester this year. So just a normal human being, I guess.
Nobody would believe. Like, what do you study?
The course is called Information Communications Technology, and it's basically along the lines of cloud computing and networking.
Oh, like the technological kind of programming side of it or the business?
Yes, a bit of programming and a bit of business is like mixed.
Is that where you first got into visual designs and stuff like that, or did you pick that up on your own?
So I pretty much picked up visual designs on my own, like when I was really young, cause I was doing a lot of freelance graphics design work for. Back in those days, they had forums, and forums people wanted signatures on those forums. So I started off designing signatures for people.
Really, you started with signatures. That's so mad because right now you make all these very detailed guides and everything. How did that like come to be?
It's mostly an overtime thing. It started off with signatures, then I transitioned into making banners for like game servers, and eventually I started writing guides on Reddit for a different game. So I thought I would just do the two together and then start making visual guides.
Oh, really? So you play other games too?
Nowadays, not so much, but I do play a lot of games over my life, I guess.
But when you did play games, have you played like other gacha games?
No, actually, AFK Arena is one of the few mobile games I really played. Most other gacha games I played for like an hour-ish, and I just, don't find the motivation to keep playing.
That's fascinating. What do you think is like the secret that got players like you into AFK Arena over others?
Oh, there's actually a lot of reasons, I think, but one of the best ones is the lack of an energy system. I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way, but not having an energy system like makes you not feel pressure to play the game and have to go under the energy cap, so called.
Right, right. I think that they talked about this actually when introducing the game. Initially, the idea was to keep people away from the game. Now, like with the events like Abyssal Expedition and stuff like that, people do stick so closely. Which in energy stuff, I'll just say this quickly if anybody doesn't know, it's like mechanics where you can only have so many interactions with the game before the game limits you out. Whereas in AFK Arena, of course, you can play as long as you'd like. You play other games like what?
Currently, the only two games I play are Escape from Tarkov, which is like a first-person shooter game on PC, and AFK Arena. That's basically it.
Really? And how much time do you play each every week?
AFK Arena is more of on a day-to-day basis. I basically just log in, do my dailies, and hop off. If you count the time I spend making the guides, it's a lot longer. But just playing the game itself takes me about half an hour each day, I guess, across all my odd accounts. And as for Tarkov, I play it more sporadically, about maybe 2 hours ish a day on average. But some days I'll play like four, and then other days I will not play.
I hear you, but that's much less than you used to before you started studying, right?
Yes, when I was in high school, I played a lot of games.
Oh, really? Like what?
Stuff like League of Legends, and then just going home playing for 8 hours a day, kind of thing. It was pretty common.
Wow, living the dream. I tried StarCraft once actually. It was like I reached like a solid 20 APM. Did you reach any success in those games?
Do you mean specifically StarCraft 2, or
Any? Like, did you ever try to run any game competitively?
I played Hearthstone competitively locally, like in Singapore, and I actually won a few tournaments here, and I was also on a part of a pretty recognizable team here. But I quitted pretty early, like in year two of Hearthstone, so I haven't really played much of anything else competitively.
Right, so that's an interesting story. You're saying you used to actually run games competitively, but when you started studying, you toned it down, and now you find it yourself in these guides, right?
Yes, yes.
I see, I see. And what drives you to make them? Like, how do you come up with them? What's your ideas?
So this is not really a secret, but personally, I like min-maxing in games. I love the theory crafting aspect of things. I like to be efficient, basically. And when seeking out how to become efficient in these games myself, I tend to feel like I want to share the knowledge with the community. So it just kind of works out. And eventually it grew into a hobby, and I try to make these guides like, more accessible by the community.
Makes sense. And how do you get the ideas for them?
It's usually stuff I'm looking at myself. So, for example, when I first started making my Legends Championship guides, I was actually looking into the dynamics of Legends Championship. I wanted to know what people are running. And eventually, I just thought, hey, you know what? I'll just keep this up. People are interested in this. I'll keep making the guides for that.
I hear that. I know for me, one of the things I like the most about your content, obviously, it's the beautiful visualization and stuff like that, but also it's how you bring down those very complex concepts that players in the end game understand, and you make them very simple, like very easy to get by everyone. Is this something you get a lot?
So this is actually a pro and a con. There's people who criticize me for making it too simple, but at the same time, the larger player base kind of feels like they benefit from this kind of more simple presentation of information. Personally, I feel like it's not a bad idea to make it simpler since it's more accessible. And if I really want to go deep into the in-depth stuff, I will like probably do specific written guides. Or Linker is also pretty good at that, going in depth on a lot of the specifics. So you guys should check out his stuff instead.
That's so nice of you. Thank you very much. But
Right,
where would you
right.
think, like, the most, like, if we talk about your content, where do you think, uh, what kind of player from early game to end game, what did kind of chapter player do you think would benefit the most from discovering you? Like, on that do you fall?
It depends a lot between which guide it is, but in general, I would say players around chapter 10 to chapter 29, because that's usually when they're like still figuring things out. I mean, even for chapter 29, most of them already have their team comps, and it's a bit late looking at guides at that point because their account is kind of invested deeply into certain heroes. So I'll say like around that level.
Definitely, but another thing is like you have so many different posts. It's really incredible to see. Like you have the meta snapshots of the world's competitive. So even players in the very late game can find something in your post. You really bring it to the next level. You see how much detail you put into those little visualizations. Like often you'll make those shades and extra. Where did you pick that off?
Again, it's due to my background working with some graphic design stuff. And over time, I also try to improve on my own design by I look up at like YouTube guides to see what kind of good design decisions people make, and I try to incorporate that into my guides.
I see. I see. That makes a lot of sense, actually. And how about in-game? Do you have a lot of accounts?
I started off playing 10 accounts, which is a pretty big number for most people.
It is.
And eventually, during the double labyrinth times, it was very hard keeping up on all the 10 accounts, so I shaved off about three. So nowadays, I run 7 accounts actively.
7 accounts. I think that's a lot.
So it's not as bad as most people think because if you are using, say, an emulator on the PC, you can actually synchronize all the actions and it becomes a lot easier to play in general.
Oh, so you use stuff like macros on BlueStacks?
I- Not really BlueStacks, but a similar emulator. But I don't use micros, it's more like synchronizing. So my single input gets sent to all my emulators.
I see. So you use multiple emulators and you have it so that the same action is taken across all of them.
Yes, yes.
That's interesting. It actually segues me into another thing, which I'm curious to hear what's your opinion about it. What do you think about the usage of macros to advance through play?
So obviously, it's not officially sanctioned by Relief Games. I believe on their terms of service, they actually mentioned disallowing players from using it, something along those lines. You're not supposed to use it, basically. But at the same time, right? So Relief has this very interesting hard-coded mechanic in the game. I'm not sure how many people actually saw it before, but what happens is that if you speed up your game too much, and yes, there are like software that help you speed up your game. If you speed it up too fast, the game actually gives you an error saying that you speed it up too fast. So in a way, I think it's like a gray area where you are like Lilith isn't going to ban you for using it, but there is like hard-coded limits of like how far you can go with it.
So you're saying they took a very specific kind of policy where they have limits in the code
Yes,
that are like restricting the maximum instead of like going hard after people and banning them one after one.
yes, for sure.
Another complaint I hear a lot about people that use them is what happens is they often get stuck because they get to a very late game stage because they do all these macros, right? And what happens is that they find it hard to progress without them later. So, what do you think about that?
I think that's a pretty common thing. Like you go into a stage where you're not supposed to be through sheer brute force of a random number generation. So basically dodging a lot or like landing a lot of crits and just passing a stage you're not supposed to. So I think there's a lot of people in that situation and I'm kind of neutral on it. I mean it's fine, right? I'm not against micro use or anything. So and you're like generally progressing further ahead. So it's kind of okay, I think.
Mm-hmm. I see. I see. I also think it's a point of balance. How about your in-game progress? Have you ever made it into the end-game campaign stages?
My furthest account is currently in chapter 31, but I'm not really pushing much. I'm trying to just AFK for Mythic pretty much. And my free-to-play main account, which you guys are familiar with, the one with the pro event frame thanks to the community, that account is currently in chapter 28 at around the 80 levels deficit. So I don't really hard push, but I play to like the tip and then I pause for like a week or two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's very healthy to like keep yourself interested in the game to sometimes takes those little breaks, don't you think?
Yeah, personally, I'm not someone who push campaign like every day. I know there's a lot of people in the community that try to push that one or two stages every single day at like a 90, 100 level deficit. I think it's insane how they have managed to do it. I'm more of a relaxed, pushing once, 2 weeks kind of person when my level is like slightly caught up and then I'll just widen the gap again.
Which do you enjoy better doing? Do you like arena and fighting other players, or do you enjoy more doing the campaign and King's Tower?
I would say a bit of both, but personally, slightly towards the PvP side. I like playing in the arena. I like playing the Legends tournament ladder. The only problem with that is that you kind of hit a cap where you can't beat players above you anymore, and then you're just farming people weaker than you for the points, which is not really worth it. and it's just a shame that there's only so far you can go with that mode.
It's so hard sometimes, right? And where are you on your arena ladders?
People who see me on my account, people who play the same server, will notice that I'm on about rank 50-ish, which is pretty bad. But at the same time, my power around is around like 4 or 5 million, and I can comfortably beat people doing like 6 7 million power solely thanks to the team comp I'm running.
Uh-huh. I don't think that's bad at all, I think they put so many thousands of players in each ladder.
Yeah, I think it's all right. I guess it's all right.
And I think this can't be a complete interview without asking about casuals. How did you find out about them and how did you get in?
Casuals actually approached me, Newton specifically, the GM of Casuals. He approached me very early on, I think, back when I made my first few guides. And then at that point, I was still in a pretty much, just a no-name guild playing very casually. Well, playing very casually, I guess. And he actually messaged me. We talked a bit. I didn't really like the idea of joining Casuals initially, so I actually didn't join them the first time round. And then it was only after about a month or two when I made my first Legends Championship guide, Newton contacted me again, and at the point I was like, "Yeah, should probably give this a try since this guy is pretty persistent about it," and eventually joined Casuals.
That's really funny, actually. And so you say that Newton discovered you into casuals. Another thing that interests me personally is how did people discover you on Reddit? Like, did you instantly on the first guide get a lot of popularity, or did that take more time?
Initially, my guides were in written forms. The people who saw my guides early on will see that I actually wrote a lot of text, like so much text that is those kind of posts that I personally wouldn't read either. And that was when people started noticing me, I think. And eventually I decided to give a shot at my first visual guide, and I think those guides are the ones that really took off.
Mm-hmm. I see. I see. And do you have a favorite part or aspect of the game itself?
Favorite aspect of the game would probably just be the campaign. I don't really have a preference for anything. I know some people like Abyssal Expedition a lot, but that is extremely time consuming.
I guess like having the campaign and the fact that it's not energy bound like so many other gotcha games. Like so fun because you can keep trying and strategizing, don't you think?
Yes, being able to play at my own pace, sort of, and not feel pressured to play a game on certain days, I think that's the best part about AFK Arena.
What do you think is the future of this game going to look like? Is there anything specific that you'd like to see?
I would like to see some more competition between guilds, like some sort of guild wars. They used to have that like back in the day, but they eventually removed it. And honestly, looking at the current direction is a bit worrying because they are headlining, like they're throwing in a lot of events, which while is good for some players, I mean people enjoy it a lot. There's also a portion of player base that is just like AFK-ish that they don't really play a game that actively. And having all these events thrown at them, the Heroes of Xperia, Abyssal Expedition, Miss Valley, Trials, Arena Trials, it just takes a lot of time and it actually stresses people out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I I
What
definitely
do you
agree.
think? What do you think about all these new events that they're just throwing into the game right now?
A blessing and a curse in a sense that it does take so much time from some of the players, especially Abyssal Expedition is a very time requiring event. But in the same times, it like engages those extra engaged players. So I think it's up to the game designers to choose if they're gonna target the game specifically at those more active players, or do they wanna more like develop the game in a layered kind of way that allows everybody to engage, even the more AFK players like you mentioned, for example, with stuff like extra types of gear, extra types of heroes, all that kind of things that you can pick up at your own pace.
Yes, definitely. It's about finding the balance between the two types of players.
Definitely, definitely. Well, White Sushi, I bet getting to know you even initially was an absolute pleasure for everyone. I'm sure it is for me. Definitely do check White Sushi's Reddit. Many different guides, super instructive, very nice to see, and very informative as well. The most liked player in the community, as far as I'm concerned. I'm also happy you came along this time and started this podcast series with me. We already have another one, a great one coming up next week. So I'd like to thank you for coming along.
Yes. I'd like to thank you for inviting me as well.
All right.